Hello, everyone, and welcome to This Week in Hospitality Marketing live show number 340. I am your host, Loren Gray, and thank you so much for joining us live if you're with us. As I look at my other platforms, we simulcast on Facebook, several places, LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube, Facebook. Yes, I already mentioned that one. Anyway, and our TV channel, sorry, the biggest one of all, which you can find on Roku, Android TV, which is Google TV, Apple TV, Amazon TV. You can find us, just look for the Hospitality Channel. And our live show, this one, is always on the free side of that. It is a membership, much like Netflix. You sign up for the additional content behind the firewall, but the live show is always on the available for everyone option, plus a couple of the older episodes. We keep at least 2 or 3 in the live show side, the free side. So you can always play back to that if you don't want to go to the other places to this. We thank everyone globally. That we're global. We're in 39 countries and counting, and we get a lot of comments and suggestions from people around the world. And thank you so much, which is the inspiration of today's conversation. And I don't know how long it's going to go because, in all honesty, this is for the more advanced dialogue. I really wanted to tackle this topic today based on its value proposition and the skills necessary for it to succeed. And that is, we're talking about TikTok, Snapchat, and stories. If you're not familiar with them, I'm sure you're familiar with the platforms in the sense of hearing about them or seeing them referred to, or even having them shared, where you see somebody's TikTok video in a social media platform like Facebook that you're using. Let's lay the landscape down a little bit as to why this topic was first off asked. Thank you so much, Mary, for having asked us to do this one. Appreciate it, because we hadn't touched this topic in recent times. From my previous co-hosts, recommendations, if you're doing all the other stuff you should be doing, the block and tackle, as it were, the optimized SEM, the incredibly helpful content on your website, optimizing your speed of your website, making it mobile friendly for your website, then doing good strategic SEM or marketing for your campaigns, and having a good CRM strategy where you're dialoguing with your guests and trying to keep retained conversations with them, and you're being progressive with your content that you're sharing outward. If all that is being constant, that you are doing those things, and you're looking to venture into a higher skill set platform, then these would be of interest for you for particular reasons. And there's lots of caveats with these, because what you're doing is you're advancing to the front line of how these things are being used. The safe zone for all marketing is to use established means of communication. It doesn't mean to be blind to progressiveness and to adapt to the new technologies that are coming in, which is why we're talking about these ones today. But in as much as knowing that sometimes you can kind of get ahead of your skis. It's the Winter Olympics. Why should I refer to that? And where you are trying to do something that you're not quite clear how to do it, or you can't be as adaptive as you need to do it, and you end up not helping yourself by doing it. Let's take TikTok as just a slice out of this. TikTok, it has gone through a lot of newsworthy content. Back a year and a half-ish now, it was a Chinese company that was stealing IDs, and the administration at the time, and I use that term loosely, was trying to force the sale of it. Somebody in the U.S. had to buy it so that they know that they could not have it just be controlled by the Chinese organization, and hence government potentially, well, not potentially, but reality-wise, because the Chinese government does connect to all of its technology. And so it had its life in that. And it was a novelty, anti-establishment social media platform. What do I mean by that? Well, all through our generations, mine and those before me and so forth, there was the establishment of people, the society as it ran, and then the people that changed it. You know, go back to the rock and roll versus the music before it kind of mentality. There's always innovation. There's always progression. Each generation, as it becomes into its own, brings with it its own preferences. We've been talking about millennials for way too long, and they're not deservedly so. We have Gen Xers, Gen Zers. We try to keep quantifying who these people are, but each generation has its preference to what it likes using. Millennials will use Facebook and do use Facebook more, and they have grown into Facebook simply out of the necessity that all the people that they find reason to communicate with via this are in this platform. And so they're there. TikTok isn't that. Not yet. TikTok is the disruptor. It's the one that is becoming, and is not even becoming, is the platform of preference for what it is best for. And I know I'm trying to be elusive when I say that, but it has come into its own as to what value it is. So let me explain a little bit of this. Facebook bought Instagram and WhatsApp, and it bought these ones, so it has all this aggregation. Instagram was a more visual, personal medium that has stories. Stories were intangibles. They lasted for a while, and then they disappeared. So there was no persistent story, history stuff. They played when they played, and then they disappeared, which allowed a lot of people to share more personal and or content that they weren't worried about it being forever somewhere. Obviously, somebody could record it, screen grab it, or something like that if it was something like that. But for the most part, the platform itself didn't support the durability of stories. You had them, they ran for 24 hours, they stopped. So it allowed for your more engaged relationships on Instagram to see what you wanted to share. And then for those who just occasionally saw you, they didn't get that privilege unless they randomly came in at the time that you were sharing a story. And that temporalness was nice because there is this growing relationship of the internet where people do begin to know or have come to realize in its full value that what goes on the internet stays on the internet. There is a durability to this. Persistence of whatever I said in anger or whatever I said in indifference or whatever I did, sharing, not thinking that the image would be seen that way or whatever, stays there. So this lack of durability is a value proposition that has come into social media because social media is such a two-edged sword and it cuts deep both ways. The trolling and the negativities and the so forth, and also the things that you share that might not always be when you think at the moment it's important, but not later on, it doesn't seem to be in the same light. So that's where the story stuff came in. And for WhatsApp, its value proposition was in this encryption capability. I could talk to you, you could talk to me, and that communication was much more private because it was encrypted than the general texting. As a matter of fact, ironically, their current ads running for WhatsApp are pointing out to that value proposition. They're showing this guy that's delivering mail, having already pre-opened it and read it. And the people are like, what are you doing? What are you opening my mail for? It's like, well, this is what your texts are. All your texts are readable by whoever's carrying that text to you. I can read everything that you're sending and so forth and so on. And it's very true. People don't realize that by using these carriers, the carriers have access to your information. We're beginning to wake up to the privacy that we've surrendered over these past years for the convenience that's sold to us for personalization. So apps like Stories within Instagram, where that durability goes away as a preference. Snapchat built its entire base of stuff based on that. And then you have TikTok. And the reason why I keep going back to TikTok is TikTok did something in December that was, to me, quite startling. There's metrics for everything. As we see now when we watch NFL, they actually have a slogan called Stat That, which is about all the statistical things that they're coming up with. These commentators on these shows for NFL are referring to stats that didn't exist beforehand because it would take an army of people to crunch following every player doing everything to determine whether there's a number ratio for how many times they touch the person to the left versus the person to the right versus how many yards they go out and all the crazy stuff that statistics does. Now with much more advanced computers, IBM Watson in particular for what they're using, they have these stats that are just amazing. You know, how many yards after he takes a left-hand turn after hitting the first receiver, blah, blah, blah. Okay. So with that, there's a stat that's for the number one website in the world. What website dominated the time of everybody in the world? And you can guess, most people do guess, and they guess correctly up until December, that Google and or possibly Facebook, they sometimes shifted positions, was the number one website. When we went through the initiation of the pandemic, Facebook jumped on top. It was a much more used platform than had time and times past. In December, it was neither Google nor Facebook. It was TikTok. TikTok turned into the #1 website for time spent on the internet. You figure that's past YouTube, which is inclusive of Alphabet, which is Google. It's but beyond Facebook. As a matter of fact, Facebook is struggling because for the first time, they can't say there's more users from this day to the previous day. They went backwards. They actually have less users. They in the quarterly report that sent their stocks plummeting, they talked about the fact that they're not in a constant growth at this point. They've actually gone back down. They dipped. It's going lesser. There's a lot of things you often say, wow, man, if I only knew that was going to happen, I would have bought more of that stock. Or if I only knew that would happen, I would have bought that land. Or these indicators are showing a shift in usage and perspective. So how does this have to do with all of us in marketing for hospitality, and especially about TikTok? TikTok is 1, not for the timid, 2, not for the inexperienced, and 3, not to be done first. Critically and most importantly, the idea that you would want to use TikTok is in a very high level world right now. For instance, you're seeing in Ad News and Ad Age and Ad Week and so forth that the brands and also Super Bowl are dominating TikTok right now. Now, it's a mixture of them providing their own content, which we'll talk about. It's them inspiring influencers, which we'll talk about. And then there is the organic influence that it generates because of the virility of what other things are going on, like their own TikTok, like their influencers. Because TikTok is a plateau, an even plane, in the sense of your opportunity. And we'll start from there. So I can have 10 followers on TikTok. And it's just my friends, and I'm showing goofy pictures of me making pizza or something. And that's, you can look at it as trite as that. I mean, there's much more to TikTok, but let's just say, just for a convenience factor, I only have 10 friends on TikTok. I watch a lot of other stuff, but no big deal. But I have 10 friends, and I tend to show when I'm making pizza because that's my thing. I like showing it on TikTok or something. So all of a sudden, I do something that's really cute with making the pizza. So my friend thinks, and they decide to share it with somebody else. And then it hits someplace that somebody says, oh my gosh, that's exactly what we need to show. And it gets shared by an influencer and or an organization, or it gets shown in such a way, media, okay, which is an influencer, where all of a sudden I go from 10 followers to 100,000 followers. That happens in TikTok. It still happens in TikTok. It doesn't happen as much in the world of Facebook anymore, Twitter anymore. It used to be with Facebook and Twitter that they were openly trying to help you, say, please invite your friends to follow you, connect with your friends on our platform, so forth. And then they betrayed that by saying, oh, now that we got all the audience that we're looking for, you're going to have to pay if you want to tell them something beyond them just maybe seeing it for the few times we show your stuff. They held it hostage. So they basically said, bring us all the people, and then now we're going to charge you to do what we said we were going to do for you before. And it left a bad taste in a lot of people's mouths. And marketers stayed with them because Facebook was saying, well, we have all this information on all these people, so we can really target your ads to be as effective as possible so you can show great revenue for the fact that you can identify the right people. Now with first-party, third-party cookies, which we've talked about in shows before, that value proposition is being diminished. Apple iOS turning down the fact that Facebook can't track the way they used to with their operating system created a gap point for Facebook. They got a gut punch where all of a sudden they had to start sharing with their shareholders, the people that own the place, that their accuracy of being able to give targeted ads was being diminished. It's strange because when they first presented that, it was, well, only 11% of our users use iOS platforms, or some statistic thereabout. And so the impact should be minimal because their prospective population quantity is less. No, the unfortunate part is that small iOS was also the people that tended to use a larger volume of the platform. So their influence on it was much larger than their audience size indicated. And that made a huge dink in the percentage of accuracy that Facebook could attest to their marketing strategies on their platform. So here it comes along back to TikTok. TikTok is, and with me included, looked at it as a fun version of an Instagram. Show a few 15-second clip or 5-second clip, 10-second clip of something, okay? You're sharing, a girl shares doing her nails or whatever, and it's just a fun little snippet of something. But it did something that I didn't account for having such an influence that it did, and this is the filters and the editing that is available on the phone for it. Not that Instagram doesn't have its own filters, not that Snapchat doesn't have its own filters. The fact of being able to create a cool dude on the longboard listening to Fleetwood Mac drinking cranberry juice, which you're like going, what? Okay. Garnered hundreds of thousands of people because it hit a chord of, that's cool. That's laid back. That's just enjoying what you're doing when you do it kind of thing. And it points to a way that social media has become. This is my personal opinion about this. Social media, when first introduced back in the MySpace world and so forth, was a new medium of being able to share you online. Not everybody can make a website. And so there was no option for what that did. Internet at the time was information gathering. It was more of a one-way conversation. I'm looking for stuff. Stuff's out there for me to find. I react to that stuff. But sharing about me was more of a sitting around a dinner table with somebody I invited over for dinner talking about stories. There was no way for me to talk to a larger audience back when MySpace first started rolling out, Facebook started rolling out, giving people the option to begin to connect with other people and share about, oh my gosh, you're my high school person I remember from such and such. What have you been doing for the past X years and blah, blah, blah. So that's where social first came in, was a means of connection and communication. Now, social is about reflection, the ability to share what you're wanting to share, but whether it's an emotional share, whether it's an intellectual share, whether it's an awareness share, it's the fact that you can be that person on stage with your opinion, much like we're doing with the show, being able to communicate and broadcast. You think of the generational changes of how media has changed from being such a centralized, only to a couple of places were the sources of information, to the dissemination of information and the struggles we're having with it in the authentication of the validity of this, that anybody with an opinion can basically sway other people's opinions with no facts at all. We haven't been able to process the transition from authoritative media to group dialogue. TikTok, and I know I keep venturing away and then coming back to this, TikTok is a medium of expression. How does this affect us for marketing? If you're dealing with feelings and expressions, and let's just put a stick in the sand of what feelings and expressions can be within marketing. Think of the Budweiser, Clydesdale commercials. Fortunately, they're very much tied to the concept of Budweiser, but most Super Bowl ads, because Super Bowl is coming up this weekend, most of us don't remember the actual company, but we remember the ad. I constantly refer to an ad that had a guy in an office with a bunch of, they put chimpanzees in there that are all hooting and hollering because he's trying to explain that the chart is going down, the business is going down, and all the chimpanzees, his bosses and coworkers are going, "Rrr, rrr, rrr." And then as soon as he flips it to point up, they all start partying and handing up bananas. And the ad was actually about a career site, to which I still can't tell you. Honestly, I got to go back and look at the video to see what it is. But it was about a career site. Like, are you working with a bunch of monkeys? In that sense, it's like, are you overqualified for you? And all the perception of that. The ad was brilliant. The connection to the company wasn't. We see this persistently in insurance ads, Geico and Liberty and Mutual and State Farm and all the rest of them. They all have now, who would have ever thought that insurance sales would be cute? They made it cute. They made the guy, the little lizard, and the Libbity Bibbity dude, and they've made it engaging. It has nothing to do with the product anymore. It's about resonating with somebody. Say, oh man, that's pretty neat. You know what? I didn't think about that. I can make my own insurance. Okay, let me go look at it. The deliverability of the message has been sugarcoated, for lack of a better way. Our social media has transitioned that way as well. TikTok as a platform is able to convey messaging through the innocence of the candy coating, so to speak, of how it's being delivered. Cranapple cranberry juice, Ocean Spray sponsored the dude on the longboat to do other things for them. because he basically promoted cranberry juice by drinking it while he's doing the longboard, listening to Fleetwood Mac. The longboard company reached out to him and said, "Can you endorse our longboard?" I don't know if Fleetwood Mac reached out to him, but the idea of it is that because of that virility of the content, the things that are able to attach themselves to it did. Now, that brings us to the TikTok conversation about what do you do with it? TikTok is still at a very high level. The reason why I was earlier referring to NFL is because the NFL is all over TikTok right now. NFL is creating TikTok. People associated with the NFL are creating TikTok. The ancillary services around the NFL are creating TikTok. Influencers that are related to those are creating TikTok. Everybody is jumping on the Super Bowl bandwagon, as it were, because they can. And here's the rationale. We all have been told, and it's been pointed out, that ads on TV during Super Bowl are the most expensive ads to buy by far compared to anything else, because the audience is so large. That's why they can command the price. And we've often ranked and rated the commercials for Super Bowls and said what was the biggest waste of money versus what was the biggest home run, what was the best commercial, so forth. We've actually made it into a whole separate dialogue around the NFL's top sports game. It's called the Super Bowl of advertising for a reason. So this is a chance to not have to spend that money. If you can hit a chord, a resonance with people, that your content on a platform that is so easily being made viral, because it is the number one website in the world, if you can hit a chord that people thought that this was really cute to be associated with, then you can escalate your message in front of a bajillion people. And I know it's a made up number. Well, actually not, but a lot of people, because of you being able to hit the right thing. And therein lies the problem. If you don't use the platform yourself, you don't know how the platform is perceived. If you are simply trying to sell something, you miss the purpose of the platform. And if you try to act like you're any of the things above, but you're not, it comes through as very fake, very quick, and you're very much trolled very much immediately for having basically fallen flat for what you attempted to do. So that's why TikTok, in its strange way, is really good about three things I would like to point out for it. It's strongly about influencer marketing. It is strongly about age groups and categorizations of whom you're trying to reach and talk to. Know for a fact that as the age groups go up, the TikTok usage goes down. Just make that as a rule of thumb for that part. So if you're looking for resonance with a younger age group, TikTok has a stronger influence than people older on the more established communication social media platforms like Facebook. Not so much Twitter, potentially, definitely the LinkedIn if they're still engaged with work and business. Instagram to some degree, I think that's their venture into the new realms. And stories is something they enjoy for person. But remember, there's a whole dark web, which is if I want to share a video to my family, I'm going to share it via dark web, which is a direct text message link to or video share on an email or something that doesn't have anything to do with anybody else seeing it. It has everything to do with me just getting the content in front of them. So TikTok is about branding who I am, what I am, why you should be interested in me. It's about novelty. Here I am for what I do compared to what I think you'd be interested in. It has to do with who do I connect to and who do they listen to? Because a lot of companies are dedicated to the space. You look at the Nikes and the Adidas's and so forth. They're always in the next space. They literally follow their genre of demographics that purchase their products for everything they're doing. They were in Snapchat before people knew Snapchat was worth being into. They were into Instagram before they knew Instagram was supposed to be what they were supposed to be into. And WhatsApp and WeChat and all the rest of the ones for that. And to also TikTok. Their presence of relationship and validity with their demographics is tied to being in the channels that their demographics use. And TikTok has been one of those. We also know that there's been a lot of platforms that have had created a large database of people and then have migrated into TikTok. Musicality. I often make jokes about my doppelganger, a young girl named Loren Gray who has millions of followers. Her name's spelled exactly as mine. And I have been the frustration of many young men who have thought that they were pouring their heart out to this young girl that started on musicality and so forth, lip syncing and everything else like this, to find out that no, it's just an older dude. It's not the other Loren Gray, because I have the Loren Gray accounts on Twitter and so forth that she didn't have because I got them way before she probably was born. So with that, the influencers come into play. The people that already have the audiences. If you're not a Nike or a Coca-Cola or Red Bull or those kind of organization entities that are always into the front edge of these platforms and their usability, then you have to rely upon the fact that people that are in those spaces that know how to communicate in that medium already are your best choice. Here's where you run into the razor's edge. Supporting an influencer versus soliciting an influencer are different. Supporting an influencer, you can run into fake hoods where people see that because you are in some way compensating this influencer to incorporate what your product is into what they're doing, they're like, I don't like it because my influencer is basically just shoving it in front of me because they're getting a check, and that means my influence and the influencer isn't going to damage their audience by doing this, so they're less likely to do that. Or they have such a strong relationship with influencers that when they say, hey, this is somebody that's giving me money to do this, but I believe it's a pretty cool product, that their influencers believe that, compared to the, oh yeah, I love this product, even though they've never heard him say about that, or she's ever said anything about it before. And there's a disingenuousness about that. So dealing with influencers goes back to one of our earlier shows where we talked about how to actually contract with an influencer. What do you negotiate is the terms of what's being shared and how it's being shared and how frequently is it being shared and what's being shared on. TikTok can be a part of that discussion now if it warrants your attention. Let's create some thresholds and points to this. If you're not a destination resort, TikTok is most likely not really going to be a strong push for you regardless, because you lack a uniqueness of identity. I say this with the caveat being that everybody has the chance to be incredibly unique. I've seen some very boring places that have no real reason to be doing what they're doing do exceptionally well in TikTok because how they deliver the content of what they're doing makes them entertaining. It is an entertainment social medium to a big degree, because everyone is trying to be that thing. It's funny. When I first looked at TikTok, I saw it as very much like a reflection of the selfie generation. I grew up at a time where we had film. And so if you were going to take a picture, because you have limited inventory, you had, if you had a big roll of 36, you were spending some money, but 24s, 12s, whatever. And for you to choose to take a picture usually meant that it was worthy of doing that with the film. Secondly, by the fact that you're taking the picture, you're not likely in the picture. You're taking pictures of things, of a sunset, of a building, or whatever it is you're taking. It's not you in front of it. You weren't holding the camera at arm's length. One, because the focal point would never be able to put both in to a same degree. And the second is the cameras just weren't that good to be able to do that. So, and they're big and bulky and there was nothing to hold it. And yes, you could put it on a timer and then run over for 3 seconds and stand in front of something. Not that that didn't happen, but the world of putting yourself in the picture in front of whatever you're doing, the selfie generation, didn't happen as much back then. But now photos are not even a dime a dozen. That's even a misnomer too. I take pictures of everything and anything that can happen. I take pictures of the fact that I see a product in the store and I just take a picture of the price tag so I don't forget it, because I can't be buggered to even type it in my text or a note to myself. I just take a picture of it and erase it later if I need to. The usages of pictures have turned into a function, a communication function. And that is indicative of our TikTok conversations and our stories and our Snapchat conversations. And even this goes into the realm of Pinterest and LinkedIn's and everything else that we share images and videos on, is that these mediums exist to share visually a story, a message, an item, a comment, a perception. That's what TikTok does, is allows you to be creative in that way. It isn't just you taking a video, holding your phone out, okay, and hoping that it comes through, but you can put little bunny ears on yourself. You can put music in the background. You can put little wavy overlay AR stuff on it. You can put lots of cool things in these videos to make them more engaging, make them more eye-catching, which is really the point of the platform a lot of times, is like, hey, here's my content. And I hope for the things I did to it, it catches your eye, because there is nothing but a constant volume. To be the number one website, imagine the amount of time that's necessary to be on it to be able to make that claim that it is, that much traffic to it. So with that, you have the idea that TikTok, for its usage for marketing, should be handled by the means of branding and awareness. If you're not incredibly creative and the person that is doing this isn't already intimately familiar and comfortable with the medium, it will be a fail if you don't have the criteria of like a destination resort or something to warrant the effort. Because talking about your lobby, talking about a breakout that you think was attractive, talking about the weather outside of your porte-cochere, as much as it's sharing, it isn't really invoking an engagement or response. What's the call to action of that? It's awareness. And TikTok also, when it comes to calls to action, isn't about selling. It is about selling, but it's not about hard selling. It's not about click and link and so forth. Now, we as marketers can do that within the engagement of these and say, if you want to know more, to get this, click here, kind of thing, whatever. But it's really about laying the groundwork down for the messaging after. This is the warm and fuzzy feeling, the eye-catching stuff, the storefront that says that there's an amazing sale inside, go inside, or kind of mentality. And once you're in the store, that's when you have the chance to share more content as to the specifics and the detail and the value proposition. That's a good value of TikTok, which is, I'm trying to draw attention to our product and us. I'm trying to make it engaging and interesting and something that people will find fun to follow or be interested in seeing the full duration of what I created, with the idea being that you're going to want to know more about me, find out more about what I'm doing. And from that, go to a place that the content supports the messaging I was trying to portray on something like TikTok. I would strongly suggest, in this world of current times, that you look at what happens over the Super Bowl. If you don't have a TikTok account, for just awareness purposes alone, make one. You don't have to use it. I would say to use it if you want to, just for the fun of being able to do it. But more importantly, don't not have one. I'm not saying to make one for your business quite yet, because businesses get routed out pretty quickly as being a business and not a person. If they're not handled well and engagement-wise, very personable. But I would say get into TikTok and see what's there. See the variations of what you can do. See the things that people are doing. See the stuff you're going, really? Well, swipe. Compared to the stuff you're going, wow, that is incredibly creative. That is incredibly cool. That's really, really neat. And you begin to find that there is a sense of story to the platform. There's a way to look at it. Twitter has often been, in my mind, the same way that I look at TikTok. It is a massively huge, fast-flowing river, incredibly deep, of just constant flow of stuff. And it's one of those things where you don't know where to even go to find what it is you're wanting to see, and let alone how do you put yourself in front of the people that you think would want to see what you have to say. And that has become better with hashtags and groups and things to identify and follow and people to engage with because of what their persistence of what they share, identifying influencers in the space and knowing the medium's usage of it. We've talked about Twitter on shows before, where Twitter is very much about a here and present communication. Buy now, sell now. This is it right now. This is here. This is what it's very temporal. It's very much now, because if you don't see it when it happens in your newsfeed, 7 seconds, you're not going to see it unless you follow the context of what it was attached to with hashtags. Like, I put this as a hashtag towards such and such, so I'm going to follow it for that reason. And then you can go back and see it in the hashtag string. It's like, oh, okay, well, let's see what that is. Oh, that's pretty cool. But without doing that, without properly producing your content and attaching it to what you think is most interesting based on hashtags or groups, okay, that you follow with, then you're going to miss all of the effort that you're putting into the platform. TikTok's like that. TikTok is a lot about, here I am right now, boom. Unless you're already engaged with me, you wouldn't necessarily see it. It would only show up if it was shared with and engaged with by others. And at that point, they see what they were sharing. I know we've talked about this as to the definition of virility many times before, but being viral is about sharing content that is shareable by the person that we shared it with. And what I mean by this is this. We all have our digital avatar on social, who we present ourselves as. And we may use social, as I mentioned before, for communication. I'm sharing things with my family versus things with my friends versus things with my high school friends versus college friends, whatever it is. I share it in the context of what I portray myself the way I think that they see me as. I certainly share content differently with my college friends than I do with my family. My family knows me a lot better than anybody else. And so my candor of my content that I share with them is pretty much open-ended compared to my college friends where I'm like, I don't want to share my political perspective on that, or I don't want to share my personal opinion about that. And I won't, but I will share things that I think portray what I am engaged with them on. The context of what I talk to them about is the content I share with them. So because of that, I share to them, they take it and go, oh my gosh, I agree. I think that's, you know what? I want to share with my friends. Why did they do that? Because it makes them look good to the people they share to. So where I shared it with them because it makes me look like I want to be with them, they share it with their friends because it makes them look like the way they want to be with them. And those people go and say, oh, well, you know, this is really cool. I want to share with my people. So what happens is it goes and it keeps getting larger and larger. That creates virility. So the key to virility is sharing content that makes other people look good to their audiences. That's what makes something viral. With that, TikTok is based on the assumption that if you can share content in a way that resonates with people, that then by them sharing it makes them look good. Like, look what I found, bing. Okay. Then it's going to get shared and it's going to grow the people coming to you because you're the source of that content. They follow it to the core, like, oh, that's Loren's thing. Okay, I like Loren. Let me follow him because I love that thing he just posted. Or let's see what else he's got. Or whatever the reason is, I start getting a bigger audience. From your business perspective, that's the medium of how you use these platforms for growth. It's not about how many rooms you sold. It's not how many people sat in your restaurant. It's about what you're sharing that makes them interested to be engaging with you. Because once they do that, they're like, so what is this cool place they were showing me that amazing pizza recipe for? Oh my gosh, there's a whole restaurant that does this? They might probably have other cool stuff. Let me go look at their site and see what they have. That's when the value of using platforms like TikTok, like Snapchat, like stories in Instagram, add that value proposition of somebody getting what that FOMO thing. I got it before I lost it. I didn't miss out on it. And I get to share with other people that probably didn't even know this was there, which makes me look good, which makes it viral. That's the key element of this engagement with these platforms. Snapchat, it has the same context to this, but you are dealing with a stronger demographic segmentation. Strangely enough, TikTok, as I said before, as you get older, lesser people using it, obviously. But it has a longer bandwidth of demographics than Snapchat does. Snapchat is, again, kind of quasi anti-establishment on using a medium that everyone else isn't already using in a way that makes it so that they don't have to be held accountable. We've seen all too often in social media that people share and regret. Spontaneous response to something, ill-written thing, a not thought through thing, an emotional thing, and it's poof and posted. And Snapchat allows you to go, here it is, and then it's gone. So if you didn't get it and you didn't screen grab it or something like this, it didn't exist. That ability to be candid is, again, a two-edged sword. One, you get raw comments, good or bad, back to you. The good part of it is that you get an engagement that is temporal. You get this immediacy that says, here it is, and people can respond knowing that they have a short duration to respond to it. And that adds to the urgency of the messaging. If you do this in such a way that you're timing with this, we talk about the research and discovery time cycle prior to revenue management's time cycles. Just to recap real quick, revenue management looks at things as booking window, arrival date, duration of stay, departure date. These metrics determine their calculations on anticipated occupancies, source of occupancies, and the amount that we charge and the restrictions we put on those charges for ADR. That's their world of mathematics. Marketing mathematics are prior to that, an inclusion to it, I should say, and that is the discovery, the education, and the ZMOD. What I mean by the three: discovery. I don't know where I want to do, where I want to go, whatever. I'm discovering what I'm interested in. Education. Now that I've narrowed down what I'm interested in, let me learn more about what I want to know about them to make a decision about which one I want to do. ZMOD, zero moment of transaction. Now that I've educated myself and looked at my options of where to stay, how to get there, what to do, and so forth, I'm making my following choices, aka conversions, my prices. That falls into the realm of booking window for revenue management, which defines the arrival, duration, and departure dates, and the ability based on demand as to the yieldability of the rates or fences associated with the rates. That's the methodology. That's the timeline that exists in our world for marketing. So where does TikTok land in that? TikTok lands in the wonderful world of discovery, the ethereal air that's usually incredibly expensive to be a part of, because the mathematics of ROI, which we often use for way too much, is applied to it. How much money did I spend? How much money did I get? ROI. In the world of discovery, that's a bad number, because you spend money without a direct, tangible track attribution to knowing that that dollar that you spent produced a dollar in return, or whatever dollars it might have been. Excuse me, drinking coffee. So it's the hardest to get budgeting for. Add the reality of our current time frame. We've gone through the depths of the pandemic. We're still in the struggles of the pandemic. Budgets are conservatively placed forward as to the anticipation of changes in business, the optimism of business, what have you, but they're still conservative as to cash flows. How much top line revenue we're getting? What's our total flow through of expenses to this? Now you want me to go over and buy a billboard in space? How many people are going to see that? What? You know, I know it's novelty. I know it's really cool. And I know it's really pretty neat that we can point out to that. And I'm sure a lot of people are going to love to see the news feed about us having a billboard in space, but how much are we going to make for that? I mean, what kind of money do you think you're going to get from that? And that's what burns the project, because it's hard to identify brand awareness in the dollar number. You can measure its impact. You can show its influence. You can show its attribution, but you can't show its value. You can imply it. And this goes into the world of public relations. Oh, what we did in news releases, if you had to buy that media, it would have been this many dollars. And I had to smile at those numbers. It's a made up number based on the metrics of the audiences that reflect the platforms that showed the PR piece or the news piece. Okay, as if you had to buy a 30-second or 60-second spot on that TV channel, or buy 6 column inches in that newspaper, or buy that space on their website. By being on any of those platforms, they imply the value of having to place an ad for the same exposure of traffic. It's a justifiable number. It's a fudged number, because it doesn't necessarily mean the impact value of that effort is truly translated the same as if you had done in that advertisement on those platforms. Sometimes it can be more valuable. Being in the news feed of a local TV station is infinitely larger in value than having an ad on their website talking about whatever, your hotel or your restaurant. So sometimes it has a much stronger effect than they can imply by these made up metrics. But the idea is, when you're in the discovery phase, that's rarefied air. So going back to our TikTok discussion about the NFL and the large players like Coca-Cola, Nike, Doritos, and so forth that are doing all these TikTok things, it's because they can afford and need to afford to be in that space of communication for constant brand awareness. I used to work in radio for many years, and radio ads, one of the biggest sales pitches for radio ads is if you don't advertise in radio, your awareness with your audience goes down and your sales go down. And we show it over and over again with clients that we had. It's when you stop the radio ads, your business went down. Why? Because people stopped thinking about you, front of mind. The radio ads persistently running, the frequency all the time, so forth, reminded people that you sold cars and you want to come in for a car. And we still see that to the TV degree too, you always see car commercials. And as I like to joke, You don't pay attention to a car commercial unless you're buying a car. Other than that, it's just a commercial that you have to get past and to get back to your programming. The audience of the auto dealerships, they used to say, oh, 50% of my ads don't work, but I don't know which 50% it is. They know what 50% there is. Their target now is saturation of market, always being in both the discovery phase and the education phase, because they have to occupy that space. If they don't, someone else will. Google will always have a number one position on a page. They'll always have a number two position, so forth and so on. They'll always have those spots filled, even if the person isn't paying as much money as they should or paying any money at all. They're always going to have those. There's not blank spots on a Google page. There'll always be content there. So they need to be persistently front of mind for those times when people begin to think what they need. Same thing with lawyers. Lawyers have restrictions legally as to how they advertise, but pretty much you see their persistence in advertising. When you need a lawyer, here's the one you go to. If you need a lawyer, this is the one you go to. They can't chase down, and there is ways to do this, geofencing and so forth. And whenever there's accidents or something, they can always make sure that their ads show up. Some people do, and I don't think it's very scrupulous, but the idea of it is that you have to be ever present in that discovery world. The education world is a transition of dialogue. Instead of awareness of who I am, you go into a conversation of what I am, so that people understand what they're purchasing. Just say. So with it, you have to keep through the progression. TikTok is great about discovering what I am, what I do. This is us. This is what I have. In a cute, I wouldn't say cute, that's a bad way of saying it, in an engaging way, so that people have a lingering remembrance of you. Like we used the example earlier about the insurance companies. Who would have thought that a little lizard was going to sell insurance? Or Mayhem, a guy that talks about him in the first person as to the one that causes the problems. Or the State Farm. And we can all sing the jingles, okay? Because they're persistently, consistently in front of us. Whether we needed insurance or not, we were entertained by the ads. And just like I mentioned, the Super Bowl ads, there are so many great ads, but we don't remember the company that were associated with it. Like the ones I was talking about, the chimpanzee and the guy with the chart. I don't remember the name of the career page for that, but it was one that did a brilliant ad that didn't connect it to them themselves. So you got to be careful in the world of TikTok, in the world of Snapchat, in the world of stories, because of the temporal amount of the type of content. In the temporary aspect of it, especially for Snapchat and stories. Because unless you have the audience that's going to see what you do, you're going to spend a lot of time on stuff that never gets seen. TikTok is one of those things that can get seen, but the life cycle of posting it and its durability is like a cliff. Boom. It's like Twitter. It's there and then it's not. It's not that it goes away, but it's not there anymore. It's down here. It's disappearing even faster. Just like Twitter. Twitter, if you're out, you're out. You're seen, you're seen. It's done. It's seen and it's acted on, or it's not. So I give the caution with TikTok that if you're doing all the other stuff, the SEO, the SEM, the CRM, the content, the optimization of websites, speed of websites, mobility of websites, the interactions of websites, all the stuff that we always say block and tackle is a requirement, and you're looking at developing brand awareness and you have a product that is worthy of that, or, and this is the other or, you are creative enough and familiar enough with the platform to truly project a uniqueness about what you are, even if you're not really anything outstanding, but you're outstandingly saying something about it, then TikTok is something to look at and say, I would say for no other reason other than it now being the number one website, or at least was in December, for total traffic compared to Google or Facebook, first time ever, that it's not to be ignored. And for that reason, get an account if you don't have one, just to see what's on there, to feel what it's like to have the platform. You don't have to share to do this. You don't have to be active on this to do this. You can just be voyeuristic and watch other things. Follow things you find interesting. Follow your interest and see what the people that are in there. People love the fact that they're people that they like that are in there. The bands that are in the news. If they're basketball fans, they follow the basketball players. The football, they follow the football players. If they're musicians and or actors, they follow these people, politicians, whatever, to see their first person sharing. People feel closer to their perception of people if they feel like they're hearing from the person directly. And that's a value position that TikTok offers that isn't always seen in the more long in the tooth social medias like Facebook, because Facebook's now about continuity, perpetual dialogue, um, slow burn stuff, because they're looking for the next post, but make no mistake, TikTok is a very active, eminent medium that if somebody wants to share an opinion, share an idea visually, it's there. And it's out in front of everybody that is following those people. So the power of the platform is profound, because being the number one website means that's the number one website people went to starting in December or before December. I haven't seen January's numbers yet. It's going to be Google, Facebook, or them. And so because of that, you are in front of a very large audience. And think of how amazingly powerful that is compared to the history of things. It used to be, unless you got interviewed by the anchor of a TV station, you didn't have that audience. And then you only had their audience compared to the three audiences between the other two channels. Or if you were interviewed by the New York Times or whatever, that was the only way you could get in front of people. The reason why there's press conferences at the White House is because that was the means for the president's staff, the president in particular, to talk to the public. And we see now it's, bad example of it. Previous to it was all on social media. It was like, really, I got to listen to this guy post nine Twitter tweets an evening and so forth. The medium usage has dynamically shifted our understanding of how we get data and information in the world right now. And TikTok is a key element to that. Well, I pretty much beat up TikTok to the process. I'm not here to say this is how you create a campaign in TikTok. I want to put the bumpers as to what you shouldn't do, what you should consider, what you can do with it, rather than saying this is how you build a campaign, this is where you go to it. You can do campaigns on TikTok. You can do campaigns on Snapchat. You can do campaigns on Instagram. You can do all those things. The caveats are know what your limits are, know what you shouldn't do, and realize what you could do if you do it the way you intended. And from that, those are your guidelines as to the value of the medium, the effort that you put into it, and most importantly, I would say the consistency that's necessary. If you're going to establish yourself, the reason why the Nikes, the Coca-Colas, the Doritos, and so forth do so good in TikTok is they never stop, just like top at the radio station ads. It's a persistent, consistent engagement. Regardless of the ROI of it, regardless of the value proposition of it being event-driven or business cycle-driven, you must maintain consistency and consistency of interest and consistency of creativity. You can have an off day where it wasn't as funny as it was the day before. Sure. I don't want to say day before, but you have to be consistent through the course of the week. But you can't constantly be lesser than you were before. You can't have a downward trend where you have a bad post, then you have a lesser post, then you have a lesser post, because you will just lose interest in people. It's like, they jumped the shark. Old statement, but still true. It used to be more interesting than it is now. Let me move on and find the next person that I find interesting, which is the way they found you from the last time that they let go of the person before you, where they didn't find them interesting. So again, thank you for the privilege of your time for our discussion today. Hopefully it helps you, gives you some perspective and parameters of how TikTok can fit into your marketing strategy, or how Snapchat and or stories can fit into your strategy. I will be discussing a little bit on the recap on our podcast today, some of the tools that I use for the influencer aspect of all these platforms, where rather than reinvent the wheel, I look upon riding upon the success of other people that are much better at it than I am. How can I engage them to help convey my messaging in ways that they already are skilled at? That's really the purpose of influencers. So I look at this as, is there an influencer audience? What demographics am I looking for? Is there influencers that speak to those audiences? And there's tools that we'll talk about in the podcast today that will help with what tools can you use to define these influencers? How do you define what you're asking them to do contractually, like as in numbers of posts and frequency, content types and what have you? And how much you're willing to compensate for them or or negotiate with them, barter with them in addition to finances and so forth, or whether it's just offering them incentive to be there. And then there's lots of variations is what I'm trying to point out as to how you can make a contract with an influencer based on their value proposition to your program. So we'll have that on the podcast today, and we'll talk about some tools that I use for that. And in connection to our recap of our discussion today from the TikTok perspective. So again, You can always find us again on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube, all those kind of fun ones. We have multiple channels on all of them, where we translate to 11 languages on our closed captioning. We also, of course, primarily can find us on the Hospitality Channel. That's on Roku, Android TV, Fire Stick, or Amazon, if whatever you want to call it, as well as Apple. And we're also an app on your Apple iOS and or Android, so you can watch us on your phone or tablet or iPad or whatever. So, again, thank you for your time. This has been show number 340. My name is Loren Gray, and I look forward to talking to you all next week.